Here we have 7.5 equations with rational expressions, and we will be solving. We solve equations. We simplify expressions, which is what we've been doing so far. So for both of these, we need to find the LCD. But the difference here with the equations is we are going to multiply all terms of the equation by the LCD. And what will happen, this will eliminate, I'm not spelling that right. This is going to eliminate the denominator. After we do that, then we will have something that looks more like what we've solved before. So we'll solve the equation, and you always want to check your answers. Now, I know in my math lab, you're going to just plug in your answer, and my math lab will tell you right or wrong right away. But for your test, you really need to go ahead and get into the practice of checking those answers. All right, so let's look at I'll spread this out a little bit more. So after you get this equation written down, then let's look at the denominators. We have 7 and 6 and 7. We can always use the numbers that are in the denominator to create our denominator. So here our LCD is 42. So what I want to do is I'm going to take and multiply everything by 42. And then what is going to happen is, remember, 42 is the same thing as 42 over 1. And so I'm looking at this 42 and this 7, I can do cross-canceling. And when I look at those two, they can both be divided by 7. And we're left with 6. Then we can take the 6 that we have here and multiply it times what we already have. So 6 times x and 6 times that negative 7. Then we can look and see that 42 and 6 can both be divided by 6. And so this becomes 7. Now we're going to take and multiply the 7 times the x minus 7. So we'll have 7x and then negative 7 times 7. Then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take and divide both of these by 7. And then 6 times 6 will give us 36. Now we have an equation that looks a little more familiar. Maybe not quite as frightening as the fractional version. Remember, the first thing we want to do here, if we have any, is we want to distribute. But we don't have any distributing to do, so that's okay. Then we want to combine like terms, and we do have some like things that we can put together. So after we eliminate the denominator, we distribute if we need to, we combine if we need to, and in this case we do. So we're going to go ahead and put together the x's, include the sign that is in front of the number, and we want to keep this equal sign lined up and come straight down. So 6 plus 7 will give us 13x. Negative 42 minus 49 will give me a negative 91. Now I'm ready to get this x by itself, but before I can get rid of the 13 that's with it, I need to move this 91 over. And so this is just what I call the moving part. You're going to either move a variable or a constant, or it could be both. And so to do that, we do the opposite, and so I'm going to add 91 here, so that will become 0, and what I do there on the left, I have to do on the right. Now we have our variables on one side, our constant numbers on the other. We're ready to get rid of the 13 that's with the x. What's happening here is they are being multiplied, so we do the opposite. I call this the finishing step. And we will either multiply or divide. And what we are doing is we're going to do the opposite, the inverse, which is what we did here also. We had a negative 91, and to make that become a 0, we added 91, so this would become a 0. And then what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So whatever kind of manipulation you make to the equation, it has to be done to both sides of the equal sign. And so my last thing here is to divide by that 13. And so x equals 127 over 13, and then we want to see, will this divide out evenly to a whole number? If not, we will leave it as a fraction. So break out your calculator and let's try that. So it looks like this is the answer. Yeah, fractions. Nobody really cares for them. I feel sorry for them. Nobody wants them around. All right, let's look at another problem. And I'm spreading this out because I'm going to find the LCD, and then I'm going to come in and multiply that LCD, and so I'm leaving myself some space to do that multiplication. All right, so let's look at the LCD. We have x plus 5 in one of our denominators, and I want to take and factor this. Remember, we want to do factor, so that's the difference of two squares. And I hope y'all can see that. Let me move that over a little bit. Looks like it might be off the page. So this is going to be our LCD. And so we want to come over the other side, and we're going to multiply all of the terms by the LCD. So I'm going to multiply here x plus 5, x minus 5. Same thing here. And same thing here. Okay. Here I have an x plus 5 at the bottom and 1 at the top, and so they disappear. 1 times x minus 5 gives me x minus 5. Here with x squared minus 25, we factored it out, so all of it is going to disappear, and we're left with the 10. Here, 1 times all of this will be the x plus 5, x minus 5. I'll separate that out a little bit. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and multiply that back out, combine these. So on the left, I'm going to combine the negative 5 and the 10. So I'll have x plus 5. When I multiply these two, I end up with x squared minus 25. Whenever we have an x squared in an equation, everything needs to come to the same side. Okay, so let's make us a little note. Whenever we have x squared in an equation, then move everything to the same side. Okay. As we're going along in the video, if you ever need to pause me, if I'm going too fast, you know, that's what's nice about a video. Just hit pause and then hit play whenever you're ready. So I'm going to move this over. So I'm going to have x squared minus x, because it's positive here, I have to subtract it on the other side. We'll do minus 5. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to subtract the x so that it cancels, subtract the 5 so that it cancels, so that I'm left with 0 on this side. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So 25 minus that 5 is going up negative 25, and negative 5 gives me a negative 30. So I have 0 equals x squared minus x minus 30, and now I have to factor. We have a trinomial. There's nothing in the first position other than the x's. And if I multiply a negative 5 times a positive, negative 6 times a positive 5, I get my negative 30. When I combine the negative 6 and positive 5, I get negative 1. Now what we will do is we will set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 6 equals 0, and x plus 5 equals 0. Then we will solve. So we have x equals 6, and x equals negative 5. Then we want to check our answers. Oh, didn't want to go down that far. Here we go. And what we do to check is we're going to start with the original equation. And so I had 1 over x plus 5 plus 10 over x squared minus 25 equals 1. So I'll check the 6 first. So I'm going to plug in 6 for here. So well, let me move it over here. So we've got 1 over 6 plus 5 plus 10 over 6 squared minus 25 equals 1. This is 1 over 11. This is 10 over 36 minus 25 gives me 11. When I add those two, I get 11 over 11. And we want to come down one more step because both sides should say the same number. Now we already know that this is equal to 1, but it really should show that it's equal. And when we have the same number, when these numbers match, then we know that 6 is correct. Let's check the other one. So we have 1 over negative 5 plus 5. I'm checking the negative 5 now. Plus 10 and negative 5 squared minus 25 equals 1. 1 over 0. Well, I can stop here. I can't divide by 0. This is undefined. And if you'll stop and think about what we did at the very beginning in 7.1 when we were having to find the domain, we would have found out that x could be anything but 5 or negative 5. Okay? So let's go ahead and remember. Let's go ahead and let's see if I want to show you another one or try one. So hang on just a minute. Let me make a decision. Okay, what I've decided is we're going to go ahead and jump in here and practice. That way it'll give you a chance to go ahead and try these and instead of just keep watching me. So let's go ahead. In my face-to-face classes, we call this a try. When we do practice, we go to the board. Here we just stay and work at our desk. Okay, so let's try this one. Now these aren't going to be too hard. The LCD is very clear in both of these. In the first one, our LCD will be 2. And the second one, it will be a minus 9. And so you'll want to go ahead and do those. Let me go ahead and give you another one where you're going to have to, the LCD is going to be a little bit more complicated. So on the third one, you're going to have a little bit more work to do to find the LCD. And so I hope that you did the homework and that you remember how to do that. Okay? So now go ahead and pause and work. And then when you're done, hit play again. And you'll come back and I'll have all the work written out for you. Okay, so on the first one I mentioned that 2 was going to be your LCD, so we multiply everything by 2. It cancels here and we're left with x plus 6 equals 12. Subtract the 6 from both sides and we get 6. Here I mentioned that the LCD would be a minus 9. So again, we multiply every term by a minus 9. This is how we get the 4a minus the 36. But these cancel. This is on top, this is on bottom, they become 1. Left with 27. Same thing here. Becomes 1, I'm left with the 3a. After we do the math, we get 9 for our answer. But we have a problem. It's not the answer. Remember back in the first part of 7.1 when we talked about the domain. Remember the denominator cannot equal 0. And if the denominator is a minus 9, and I plug in my answer of 9, then I have 9 minus 9, and that equals 0. So this is not my answer. This is my answer. Okay? On the test, you probably won't have too many of these, maybe 1 or 2. In your homework, you will need to be careful. But so when you get that button that says, it's wrong, then look at the denominator. On number 3, I went ahead and found the LCD, and I didn't finish this out. I thought I would go ahead and just do it with you here. You know, when you look at these two, 90 over 9 equals 10. And 90 over 15 equals 6. And 90 divided by 18 equals 5. So we're going to have 10 times x plus 6 times 2x equals 5x. Combine everything. Get all the letters together. We subtracted, and when I divide by that 17, x equals 0. So this one, you might want to pay attention to the way it's set up. Notice in the numerator, there are no constant numbers. There are no numbers by themselves. The only numbers we have are the coefficients that are attached to the variable x. So if you have a situation like that, it doesn't matter what these are. If there are no constant numbers in the numerator, then your answer is going to end up being 0. Okay? Well, I hope that helps with 7.5. You'll need to be careful on your test to be sure that you are simplifying or solving. There is a difference.